The job came through on a Tuesday afternoon while I was sitting in my truck outside a Safeway in Hermiston. I'd been applying to anything that didn't ask too many questions, and most places didn't bother calling back once they ran my license. So when the phone actually rang, and a woman said Bonneville Power needed overnight security at Coyote Springs, I said yes before she finished the sentence. Didn't ask about benefits, didn't ask for a contract. She gave me a time and directions, and that was it. I figured it was some kind of desperate situation. Power companies don't usually hire day of for critical infrastructure. But I wasn't in a position to care why they were desperate. My truck needed gas, and my motel bill was due Friday, and I had maybe $60 to my name. The DUI back in March had taken my license for 6 months, and the electrical union in Spokane stopped calling after I missed 2 weeks of work during the hearing. So yeah, survival. I drove out that evening with the sun dropping behind the hills. Boardman sits in this flat stretch of high desert where the Columbia cuts through, all brown grass and irrigation pivots and wind farms going on forever. The substation was east of town, set back from the highway behind a double fence line. I could see the lattice towers from 2 miles out, Nachong industrial geometry that used to mean steady work for me. The gate was unmanned when I pulled up. Just a card reader and an intercom mounted on a post. I sat there with my window down, engine ticking, trying to figure out if I was supposed to call someone. Then a woman came walking out from a small building near the fence. She had a BPA windbreaker on and a lanyard bouncing against her chest. I killed the engine and got out. "Clyde Cooper?" she said. "That's me." She looked me over once. Not suspicious exactly, just thorough. Like she was checking that I matched a description someone had given her. "Ruby Park. I handle site access." I nodded. Didn't know what else to say. She held out a hand. "ID." I passed her my driver's license. The one that said valid but had restrictions I didn't feel like explaining. She glanced at it, then at me, then pulled a clipboard from under her arm and made a check mark. "You worked electrical before?" she asked. "Yeah, union certified, mostly commercial and industrial." "But not right now." "Not right now," I said. She handed the ID back. "You're not here to work electrical. You're here to watch the building and call if anything happens. That's all." "Got it." She turned and started walking toward the gate. I followed, boots crunching on the gravel. The air smelled like dust and sagebrush and something faintly metallic I couldn't place. Maybe ozone from the transformers. The whole site had that hum you get near high voltage, low enough you feel it more than hear it. Ruby swiped a card and the gate rolled open. She waited for me to walk through, then swiped again to close it behind us. The gravel lot spread out in front of the control building, which was just a squat concrete rectangle with narrow windows and a steel door. Beyond that was the switchyard itself, rows of breakers and disconnects and bus work, all of it lit up orange in the last of the daylight. I kept my eyes on the building, tried not to look too hard at the equipment. It had been 5 months since I'd been inside a yard, and I didn't need to start thinking about what I used to do. But Ruby kept glancing that direction, not obvious, just quick looks, like she was checking to see if something had moved. Her shoulders stayed square and her pace didn't change, but I noticed. You spend enough time on job sites, you learn to read when someone's waiting for something to go wrong. "Everything okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. We crossed maybe another 20 feet of gravel. Then she said, "It's a quiet site, mostly automated. You won't see much activity." That wasn't an answer, but I let it go. We reached the door and she pulled out a different key. This one was brass, old-fashioned. The lock clicked and she pushed the door open. Warm air spilled out, carrying the smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner. "Pay is $30 an hour," she said. Flat, like she was reading off a script. "Cash, end of shift, no questions." I blinked. 30 an hour for a security gig was double what I'd expected, maybe more. "Okay," I said. "Shift starts right now," Ruby said. She stepped inside and I followed. The interior was basic. Linoleum floors, fluorescent lights, a desk with a couple of monitors showing camera feeds. There was a break room off to the left and a hallway leading back toward what I guessed were equipment rooms. Previous guard was supposed to finish his rotation yesterday, Ruby continued. She set the clipboard on the desk and turned to face me. Her expression didn't change. He stopped answering around 0300. Didn't call in, didn't file a report. We haven't been able to reach him since. That landed hard. I stood there in the doorway, one hand still on the frame, and tried to process what she'd just said. The guy before me had gone dark mid-shift, just stopped responding, and now they wanted me to step in and do the same job, same building, same hours. You check on him? I asked. We sent someone at dawn. Building was secure. Logs were incomplete. But he was gone. He was gone, Ruby said. I looked past her at the monitors. 4 screens, each split into quadrants. Camera angles covering the fence line, the parking lot, the switchyard, the hallway behind us. Everything looked still, empty. Any idea what happened? I said. Ruby's mouth tightened just a fraction. No. I should have walked. That's the smart move when someone offers you twice the going rate to replace a guy who vanished on the job. But I thought about my truck and the motel and the $60 and the fact that nobody else had called me back in 2 weeks. What do you need me to do? I asked. Stay inside. Monitor the cameras. If you see anything unusual, call the number on the desk. There's a checklist for hourly rounds. Just visual checks, nothing hands-on. Don't go into the switchyard. Don't touch any equipment. That's it? That's it. She pulled a ring of keys from her pocket and set them next to the clipboard. 2 keys. One for the exterior door, one for the break room. Bathroom's through there. Coffee's old, but it works. Foreman comes by at 0600 to relieve you. I picked up the keys. They were warm from her hand. Ruby walked past me toward the door, then stopped. She looked back, and for the first time her expression shifted. Not worried exactly, more like she was weighing whether to say something. You seem like you've got your head on straight, she said. I try. Good. Keep it that way. Then she left. I heard her footsteps on the gravel outside, then the sound of the gate rolling open and closed again. A minute later, an engine started up in the distance. Headlights swept across the window and faded. I stood in the middle of the control room, holding a dead man's keys, and wondered what the hell I'd just signed up for. Ruby pulled something from her jacket pocket, a laminated card, maybe 4 by 6 inches, the edges worn smooth from handling. She held it out. Read this, she said. Don't say anything. Just read it. I took the card. The lamination was cloudy in spots, probably older than it looked. The text was printed in that generic office font, all caps for the header. Overnight Security Protocols, Coyote Springs Substation. Below that, a numbered list. I started reading. 1. Keep interior bay door shut and locked after 12:07 a.m. Do not open for any reason until 05:45 a.m. 2. If yard lights blink 3 times in succession, face the south wall immediately. Count to 60 aloud. Do not turn around until count is complete. 3. Do not answer the intercom after 2:40 a.m. unless the display screen shows the word TEST in green text. Any other display or no display. Do not respond. Do not acknowledge. 4. If you observe any individual in the switchyard who is not wearing an orange high-visibility vest, press alarm 2 on the desk panel. Do not attempt to identify the individual. Do not look at the switchyard again until yard lights cycle off and on. 5. If the background hum from the equipment stops completely, do not look up. Remain seated. Wait for hum to resume before moving. I read it twice. The second time didn't make it make more sense. I looked up at Ruby. She was watching me with that same tight expression she'd had outside when she kept glancing at the switchyard. "These are serious," she said. Her voice had dropped lower, more controlled. "They're not suggestions. They're not there to mess with you." I glanced down at the card again. Rule 2. Face the south wall and count to 60. "What happens if I don't follow them?" I asked. Ruby's jaw shifted. "People get hurt." "What people?" "You." She pointed at the card. Previous guards who didn't take it seriously. One guy thought Rule 3 was a prank, answered the intercom at 3 a.m. because he was bored. She stopped. I waited. "They found him outside the fence line the next day," Ruby said. "He couldn't explain how he got there, didn't remember leaving the building, wouldn't come back to finish his report." I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I got right before I knew a job was going sideways, but I also thought about $60 and a motel bill due Friday, and the fact that I'd already said yes. "Okay," I said. Ruby held my eyes for another second, then nodded once. "Keep the card on you. If you're not sure about something, check it." I folded the card in half and slid it into my front pocket. The lamination crinkled. Ruby turned and walked toward the door without saying anything else. Her boots made flat sounds on the linoleum. She pulled the door open and stepped outside, and I heard gravel crunching under her feet as she walked toward the gate. I stayed where I was, next to the desk, listening. The gate rolled. Metal on metal. That industrial scrape. Then her truck door opened and slammed shut. Engine turned over. Headlights swept across the narrow window near the ceiling, and then the sound faded out toward the highway. That was it. I was alone. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, mostly out of habit. The screen lit up. Time showed 8:42. I checked the signal bar. Nothing. No service, not even one bar flickering in and out. Just a blank space where the carrier name should have been and a little X next to the signal icon. I tried anyway. Opened the message app, but it wouldn't load. Tried the browser. Same thing. The phone was basically a clock and a flashlight now. No easy way to call anyone. No scrolling through nothing to kill time. No checking the news or the weather or what my coworkers were posting. Just me and the hum of the building. I shoved the phone back in my pocket and looked around. The wall clock above the monitors ticked forward. 8:43 now. The sound was louder than I expected. You don't notice clocks when there's other noise, but here it stood out. I walked over to the desk and sat down in the chair. It was one of those old office chairs with a torn seat cushion and a squeaky hydraulic lift. I adjusted it lower and pulled myself up to the desk. 4 monitors, each one split into quadrants. 16 camera views total, most of them showing fence line and gravel and darkness. A couple showing the switch yard, all that metal and wire lit up by overhead floods. One showing the hallway behind me. I glanced at that one. Empty. Just linoleum and cinder block and a door at the far end. The SCADA screens were mounted higher above the monitors. 2 of them, older models with thick bezels. They cycled through data every few seconds. Voltages, load levels, breaker statuses. All of it automated. Numbers updating, lines shifting, everything running without anyone touching it. I knew enough to recognize what I was looking at. Not enough to do anything with it. I'd worked around control systems before on commercial jobs. But this was transmission-level gear. Different scale. I leaned back in the chair and it squeaked. The hum was constant. Low frequency, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Transformers, maybe, or the buswork. Something big pulling current. I pulled the laminated card out of my pocket and set it on the desk next to the clipboard. 5 rules, all of them weirdly specific. I figured I'd treat them like a checklist, something to keep my brain working through the dead hours. A mind game, 12:07. That was the first one. Keep the bay door shut after 12:07. I didn't even know where the bay door was yet. 2:40. Don't answer the intercom unless it says test. I looked at the intercom panel on the desk. Small screen, currently blank. A button labeled talk and another labeled listen. I wondered what would happen if I answered it wrong. Then I decided not to think about that. The SCADA screens cycled again. Load dropped on one of the lines, then balanced back out. I watched the numbers shift. It was almost calming. Predictable. I checked the wall clock, 8:46, 9 hours and 14 minutes until the foreman showed up. I pulled the clipboard closer and flipped it open, looking for something to do besides sit there and count seconds. The hum kept going, steady, low, constant. I sat at the desk, listening to it cycle through the walls and floor, feeling it more than hearing it after the first hour. Transformers mostly. Maybe some of the bigger breakers, the kind of background noise you get at any live site once the sun goes down and the crew clears out. I checked the clipboard again around 11:30. The hourly checklist was pretty basic. Visual sweep of all camera feeds. Note any alerts on the SCADA screens. Check door and window seals. Log the time and initial the line. I'd done 2 rounds already and nothing had moved, except the data cycling on the monitors. The laminated card sat next to the clipboard. I kept looking at it. 5 rules. Weird, specific rules. But the longer I sat there in the quiet with nothing happening, the easier it got to tell myself they were just protocol. The kind of thing someone in risk management writes up after one too many insurance claims. Keep the night guard busy. Give him something to focus on besides the dark and the isolation. Make him check the clock. Follow procedures. Stay awake. I almost believed it. The coffee in the break room was burnt, but I drank it anyway. I'd found the bay door during my second visual check. Steel frame, heavy duty, led out to the equipment yard on the north side. The latch was solid. I tested it twice. Rule 1 said to keep it shut and locked after 12:07 until 5:45. Simple enough. I figured I could handle that. The wall clock ticked over to 11:43. I rubbed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. The hydraulic lift squeaked. My phone sat on the desk next to the clipboard, still showing no service. Just a clock now. I thought about the previous guard. The one who'd stopped answering around 3 in the morning and turned up outside the fence with no memory of leaving. Ruby said he wouldn't come back to finish his report. I wondered what he saw. Then I wondered if thinking about it was a bad idea, so I checked the monitors again. 16 camera angles. Fence line, gravel, darkness, switchyard, hallway. Nothing moved. My phone buzzed. I picked it up fast, confused because there was no service. But the screen showed an incoming call. No number. Just a name. Ricky Banks. I answered. Yeah. Clyde. Hey. Ricky's voice came through clear, no static. You at that Coyote Springs gig? I exhaled. Didn't realize I'd been holding my breath. Yeah. How'd you get through? I don't have any bars out here. Landline callback. I tried your cell first. Got nothing. So I called the site number Ruby gave me earlier. Some kind of auto-forward must have kicked in. He paused. You doing okay out there? I looked at the monitors. Still nothing. So far. Good. That's good. Ricky sounded tired. Background noise on his end. TV, maybe. I wanted to check in. That site's got a reputation. Ruby mentioned the last guy didn't finish his shift. Yeah, Derek. I worked with him on a panel swap last summer. Solid guy. Not the type to flake. Ricky's tone shifted a little. Careful. He wouldn't talk about what happened. Just said he wouldn't go back. I didn't say anything. The hum from the transformers filled the silence on my end. Ricky kept going. Look, I don't know what Ruby told you, but that site's isolated. No neighbors, no traffic, nothing between you and the highway except dirt and fence. Copper thieves know that. They test the perimeter sometimes. See if anyone's actually watching. I glanced at the camera feeds showing the fence line. You think that's what happened to Derek? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he saw something and spooked himself. Ricky paused again. Point is, you're out there alone. If something feels wrong, you call it in. Don't try to handle it yourself. I'm not planning to. I picked up the laminated card, turned it over in my hand. Ruby gave me a list of rules. I'm just going to follow those and keep my head down. What kind of rules? I read him the first one. Keep the bay door shut and locked after 12:07. That's specific, Ricky said. Yeah. What else? I read him Rule 2. If the yard lights blink 3 times, face the south wall, count to 60. Don't turn around until the count is done. Ricky went quiet for a few seconds. The TV noise in the background got louder, then muted. Clyde, you serious? That's what it says. What the hell kind of site protocol is that? I don't know. I set the card down. Ruby said people get hurt if they don't follow the rules. She told me about a guy who answered the intercom at 3 in the morning. They found him outside the fence. No memory of leaving. Ricky swore under his breath. And you took the job anyway. 30 an hour, cash. He didn't argue with that. He knew my situation. We'd worked the same commercial jobs in Spokane before everything went sideways for me. He'd been the one who told me Bonneville sometimes hired for short-term gigs when I mentioned I was looking for anything that paid. All right, Ricky said finally. You're there now. Just stay inside. Follow the card. Don't go poking around. Don't try to figure out what the rules are for. If something shows up outside, you let it stay outside. Got it? Got it. I mean it, Clyde. No matter what you see or hear, you stay in that building and you follow the rules Ruby gave you. I will. Good. He sighed. I'm going to stay up for a while. If you need to call, use the landline. Number's in my phone. Thanks, Ricky. Yeah. Be careful out there. He hung up. I set the phone back on the desk and looked at the clock. 11:56. The conversation had eaten up most of the last stretch before midnight. I felt better having talked to someone. Normal human contact. Ricky's voice, his concern, the practical warning about copper thieves. It all felt like normal job site stuff, the kind of thing that made sense. I wanted to hold on to that feeling. The clock hit midnight. I logged it on the checklist, initialed the line. 12:07 was coming up fast. I stood and walked toward the hallway, boots loud on the linoleum, and headed for the bay door. The door was right where I'd found it earlier. Steel frame, industrial latch, the kind that locks with a heavy throw bolt. I put my hand on it to check one more time. Wind hit the other side. Not a gust, a slam. Hard enough that the whole frame rattled and I felt the shock travel up through my palm into my wrist. I pulled my hand back and stepped away from the door, heart kicking up in my chest. The wind hit again, harder. The bolt shook in its housing and the frame groaned against the cinder block. I stared at the door, listened. The wind didn't sound right. No build-up, no howl. Just impact, like something throwing itself against the steel. I checked the latch, still secure. The bolt was seated all the way through. The wind stopped. I stood there in the hallway, breathing too fast, listening to the hum from the transformers and the tick of the wall clock back in the control room. Nothing else moved. No more wind. No sound from outside the door at all. I checked my watch. 12:04. 3 minutes until 12:07. I kept my eyes on the door, waiting to see if the wind would come back. It didn't. The building settled back into its low hum and the distant tick of the clock. I stood there another 30 seconds, then walked back to the control room and sat down at the desk. The monitors showed the same 16 angles. Fence, gravel, darkness, switchyard. I scanned each quadrant looking for movement. Nothing. 12:06. I pulled the laminated card closer and read Rule 1 again. Keep the interior bay door shut and locked after 12:07 a.m. until 5:45 a.m. Didn't say why. Didn't say what happened if you opened it. Just said keep it shut. I wasn't planning to test it. The clock ticked over. 12:07. I exhaled and logged the time on the checklist. Bay door secure. All cameras clear. I started to initial the line. The yard lights blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. I dropped the pen. Rule 2. If yard lights blink 3 times in succession, face the south wall immediately. Count to 60 aloud, and do not turn around until the count is complete. I shoved the chair back and stood up fast, knocking my knee against the desk edge. Didn't matter. I turned away from the monitors, away from the windows, and found the south wall. Cinder block painted industrial beige. A bulletin board with faded safety notices. A fire extinguisher mounted in a red bracket. I stared at the extinguisher and started counting. 1, 2, 3. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. I kept going. 4, 5, 6. I wanted to turn around, wanted to check the monitors, see what was happening in the switch yard. My shoulders were tight and I could feel the space behind me like a weight. 7, 8, 9. Don't turn around. That's what the rule said. Count to 60. Don't turn around until the count is complete. 10, 11, 12. The hum from the transformer stayed steady. I focused on that. Familiar. Normal. Just equipment doing what equipment does. 13. 14. 15. I thought about the previous guard. The one who didn't follow Rule 3 and ended up outside the fence with no memory. Ruby said people get hurt when they don't follow the rules. Not the building, not the equipment. The guard himself. 16, 17, 18. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pockets. 19, 20, 21. Halfway there. I kept my eyes on the fire extinguisher. Red metal, black hose. Inspection tag dated from last April. 22, 23, 24. The air in the room felt different, heavier, maybe, or I was just breathing too shallow. I forced myself to take a slow breath. 25, 26, 27. Nothing touched me. Nothing made a sound, just the hum and my voice counting. 28, 29, 30. I thought about stopping, thought about turning around to see if anything had changed. But the rule said 60, not 30, not 59, 60. 31, 32, 33, so I kept counting. 34, 35, 36. My voice steadied out. I fell into the rhythm of it. Numbers and breath and the hum underneath. 37, 38, 39, 40. 2/3 done. I watched the second hand on the wall clock in my peripheral vision, making sure I wasn't counting too fast. 41, 42, 43. The weight behind me didn't change. Didn't get worse. Didn't fade. Just stayed there. 44, 45, 46. I focused on the extinguisher, the bracket, the safety notices on the bulletin board with their curled edges and sun-faded text. 47, 48, 49, 50. 10 more. I could do 10 more. 51, 52, 53. My knee throbbed where I'd hit it on the desk. I ignored it. 54, 55, 56. Almost there. 57, 58, 59. I took a breath. 60. I stopped, stood there facing the south wall for another few seconds, waiting. The rule didn't say what happened after 60, just said don't turn around until the count is complete. The count was complete. I turned around. The monitors showed the same 16 camera angles. The switch yard was still lit. The fence line was clear. The hallway was empty. Everything looked exactly the same as it had before. The lights blinked. I walked to the desk and sat down. My legs felt shaky. I checked the yard lights through the narrow window near the ceiling. Steady now, no blinking. I watched them for a full minute. They didn't blink again. The hum from the transformers kept going. steady and low and constant. I picked up the pen and finished initialing the checklist line: 1207, bay door secure, yard lights clear. The laminated card sat on the desk next to the clipboard. I looked at Rule 2 again. The blinking had stopped exactly when I finished counting. Not before, not after. Right at 60. Clean. Like something had been waiting for me to follow the rule. I put the card down and checked the clock. 12:13 a.m. 5 hours and 47 minutes until the foreman arrived. I kept my hands on the desk where I could see them and watch the monitors cycle through their feeds. The clock hit 1:03 when the headlights showed up on the monitors. I'd just finished my 1 o'clock visual check. Bay door still latched. Hallway still empty. Nothing moving in the switchyard. I was sitting at the desk with the clipboard open, writing down the time and my initials, when I caught the glow in the upper left quadrant. Camera 3. Gate view. A white pickup rolled to a stop maybe 10 feet back from the fence line. Newer model, I think. Hard to tell in the floodlighting. It just sat there with the headlights on, engine probably running, pointed straight at the camera. I set my pen down and leaned closer to the screen. No one got out. I waited, counted to 30 in my head. Still nothing. The truck didn't move. Door didn't open. I couldn't see anyone in the cab from that angle, just the windshield reflecting light back at the camera. I checked the other feeds. Fence line clear. Switchyard empty. Hallway behind me still showing linoleum and cinder block and nothing else. When I looked back at camera 3, the pickup was still there. The bed looked empty. No tools, no cargo, nothing visible. But the suspension sat low, real low, like the whole frame was sagging under weight that wasn't there. That bugged me. I've loaded enough trucks to know what a half-ton looks like with 1,000 pounds in the back, and this one had that same squat, except the bed was empty. I could see straight through the rails. I pulled my eyes away from the monitor and looked at the desk. The radio sat next to the phone, a standard Motorola unit with a coiled handset and a strip of tape across the top labeled Morrow Co-Dispatch. Ruby hadn't mentioned it, hadn't told me to use it or not use it. Just said to call the number on the desk if I saw anything unusual. I looked at the phone, looked at the radio. The white pickup on camera 3 hadn't moved. I reached for the radio handset, then stopped with my fingers an inch from the plastic. Ruby said the last guard went silent around 3 in the morning. Stopped answering. Didn't call in. They found the building secure and the guy gone. I didn't know what that meant. Didn't know if he'd called someone first, and that's what got him in trouble, or if he just walked out on his own, or if something else happened that Ruby didn't want to explain. I also didn't know what Alarm 2 actually did. The laminated card was sitting next to the clipboard. Rule 4 said, if anyone in the switchyard wasn't wearing an orange vest, press Alarm 2 and don't look at the yard again until the lights cycled. But the card didn't say what the alarm triggered. Didn't say if it called someone or locked something down or just made noise. I pulled my hand back from the radio. The pickup was still on the screen when I checked again. Same position, no movement. Then the headlights went dark, just clicked off, no fade, no flicker. 1 second they were on, the next they were gone. But the truck was still there. I could see it on the camera, sitting in the same spot, lit by the perimeter floods. White paint, chrome bumper, dark windows. I stared at the monitor. My eyes slid off it. I don't know how else to describe it. I was looking straight at the screen, focused on the quadrant showing camera 3, but my attention wouldn't stick. It kept drifting left toward the fence line view, or down toward the switchyard, like my brain didn't want to process what it was seeing and kept trying to look somewhere else instead. I forced myself to focus. Pickup, white, at the gate. My eyes slid right, caught on the hallway feed. I tried again. Pickup, camera 3, still there. My focus peeled away like oil off water. It wasn't the camera. The feed was clear. No static, no distortion. I could see the fence, the gravel, the edge of the gate housing. Everything else in that quadrant was fine, just the truck. My brain wouldn't lock on. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, opened them and looked at the desk instead, at the radio, at my hands. Then I checked the clock, 1:07. When I looked back at the monitors, the pickup was still sitting there. I could see it in my peripheral vision, white shape in the upper left screen, but when I tried to look at it directly, my attention slipped sideways. I kept my eyes on the other feeds instead. Watched the switchyard. Watched the hallway. Checked the fence line on the east and south sides. Minutes passed. 3, 5, maybe more. I glanced at camera 3 again without trying to focus on the truck itself, just the general area. The space where it had been was empty. I sat forward. The gate view showed gravel, fence, darkness past the perimeter lights. No vehicle, no headlights, no dust cloud. I switched my eyes to the other exterior feeds, the ones covering the access road and the approach from the highway. Nothing. No taillights, no movement. The truck was just gone. I checked the timestamp on the camera feed. It was live. No delay, no loop. The clock in the corner of the monitor matched the wall clock. 1:12. I looked back at camera 3. Definitely empty. The truck hadn't turned around. I would have seen that. And the access road was a straight shot for half a mile before it curved toward the highway. Even if it had backed out fast, I should have caught it on one of the other cameras. But there was nothing. I sat back in the chair. The hydraulic lift squeaked. I didn't write it down on the checklist. Didn't call the number on the desk. Ruby said to report anything unusual, but she also said the last guard stopped answering and disappeared, and I still had $60 to my name and a motel bill due Friday. I figured keeping my mouth shut was the better play. The transformer hum stayed steady. The SCADA screens cycled through their numbers, load balancing, voltages holding. I picked up my coffee mug from earlier and took a sip. Still warm enough, still tasted like burnt grounds and old tap water. I kept my eyes on the monitors and didn't look at the laminated card. Around 2:15, the hum changed. I noticed it right away. Not because it got louder or softer, but because it thinned out. Like someone had taken the low end off the frequency and left just the high edge, thready and unstable. I was sitting at the desk. Had the clipboard open. I'd just logged my 2 o'clock check and was drinking more coffee, trying to stay sharp. The hum dipped. My whole body went tight. It didn't stop. That was Rule 5. If the hum stopped completely, stay seated, don't look up, wait for it to come back. But this wasn't a stop. It was a drop. A thinning. Like the transformer was still running, but something in the air had changed and the sound wasn't carrying the same way. Every instinct I had screamed at me to look up. Not at the monitors. Not at the SCADA screens. Up. At the ceiling. Toward the source of the hum. Toward the transformer bank outside. Toward whatever was making that sound in the first place. I wanted to tilt my head back and track it. Wanted to stand up and walk to the window and look at the switchyard and see what was different. I didn't. I locked my eyes on the floor instead. Linoleum. Scuffed beige tiles with flecks of gray. Older than me, probably. Some of the edges were peeling up near the wall. There was a coffee stain 2 tiles to my left, shaped kind of like a kidney bean. The hum thinned further. My hands were on the desk. I watched them. Watched my knuckles go white where I was gripping the edge. I didn't look up. The air felt different. Thinner, maybe, or heavier. I couldn't tell. It was like pressure was building in my ears the way it does on a plane, but there was no pop. Just a slow squeeze. The coffee mug was sitting in front of me. I could see it at the bottom edge of my vision. White ceramic with a hairline crack up one side. The hum wavered. I kept my eyes down. Counted tiles. 1, 2, 3 rows across. 4, 5, 6 toward the hallway. My neck hurt from holding my head in one position. I wanted to stretch. Wanted to roll my shoulders back and look around and reset. I didn't move. The hum came back. Not all at once. It built up slow, like someone was turning a dial, bringing the low frequency back in until the sound filled out again and settled into the same steady drone it had been all night. I waited another 10 seconds, then 20. Then I lifted my head. The monitors showed the same 16 feeds: fence line, gravel, switch yard, hallway, nothing moving. The SCADA screens were still cycling, voltages steady, load balanced. I looked at the clock. 2:18. I picked up my coffee mug and took a drink. It tasted wrong. Not burnt, not stale. Metallic. Like I was drinking water out of a rust pipe, or like I'd been chewing on a penny. I swallowed it anyway, then set the mug down and stared at it. The coffee had been fine 10 minutes ago, same pot I'd made at 9, same mug. Nothing had changed, except the air, the hum, whatever had just happened. It felt like something had shifted, like the whole building had moved 6 inches to the left and then snapped back into place, and now everything looked the same but wasn't quite sitting right. I didn't touch the coffee again. I sat there at the desk with my hands flat on the clipboard, watching the monitors, listening to the hum. 3 hours and 42 minutes until the foreman showed up. I kept my breathing steady and didn't look at the clock again. At 2:41 in the morning, the intercom crackled to life. I was sitting at the desk with my hands flat on the clipboard, watching monitor 3 for any sign of that white pickup coming back. The static made me flinch hard enough that my knee hit the underside of the desk. I looked at the intercom panel. The small display screen glowed dim white, completely blank. No green text, no test indicator. Rule 3 was pretty clear about this. Don't answer the intercom after 2:40 unless the screen shows test in green. I didn't touch the panel. The static cleared and a voice came through. Female. Calm. Professional. "Clyde, this is Ruby Park. I'm stuck at the gate." I stared at the screen. Still blank. Just that dim white glow. The voice continued. "The card reader's not responding, and I need you to cycle the lock manually from inside. Can you hear me?" It sounded exactly like Ruby. Same clipped tone. Same precise way she said my name, with a tiny pause before it like she was reading it off a list. I glanced at camera 3. The gate was visible in the upper left quadrant. Empty. No truck. No headlights. Just the card reader housing and the fence line lit by floods. "Clyde," the voice again, patient. "I know it's late. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary. I need you to open the gate." I pulled the laminated card closer and reread Rule 3 even though I'd memorized it hours ago. Prohibits answering the intercom after 2:40 a.m. unless the display screen shows the word test in green text. The screen was blank, not green, not showing any text at all. My hand moved toward the talk button anyway. I stopped it halfway, fingers hovering an inch above the panel. "There's an issue with one of the breakers," the voice said. "I need to get inside and check the SCADA readings before we lose the line. It'll take 2 minutes. Just cycle the lock." I looked at camera 3 again. The gate was still empty. I checked all the other exterior feeds. Nothing. No vehicle anywhere on the access road or near the fence line. If Ruby was actually out there, where was her truck? The voice came back. "Clyde Cooper." That pause again. Careful. Like she was making sure she had the name right. "I'm asking you to open the gate. The controls are next to the door. Green button on the left panel. You've seen it." I had seen it. A small metal panel near the main door with 3 buttons, green, yellow, red, and a label that said, "Gate Override." Ruby had walked past it twice when she'd let me in earlier. She hadn't mentioned it, hadn't pointed it out, hadn't included it in any of the instructions she'd given me. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I made it 2 steps toward the door before I caught my reflection in the narrow window near the ceiling. The window faced the switch yard and the glass was old, probably scratched to hell, so reflections came through dark and warped. I saw myself moving across the control room, saw my shape pass the desk, saw my arm swing forward as I took the second step. Except the reflection moved wrong. It lagged, just a fraction of a second, like the image was on a delay, playing back something that had already happened. I took another step and watched my reflection catch up, then fall behind again when I moved my head. I stopped walking. My reflection stopped a half-second later. The intercom hissed. "Clyde, I don't have much time. Please open the gate." I turned and looked directly at the window. My reflection turned to face me, but the movement was off. Loose. The mouth didn't quite match up with where mine was. The eyes sat a little too high. I dropped back into the chair hard enough that the hydraulic lift squeaked and bottomed out. The voice on the intercom shifted, still calm, still professional, but there was something underneath it now, something patient and hungry. "I need you to cycle the lock," it said again. "Green button, left panel, you know where it is." I didn't touch the talk button, didn't respond, just sat there with my hands on the armrests and watched the blank intercom screen glow white. "Clyde." A long pause. "Clyde Cooper." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm going to ask one more time." I looked at camera 3. The gate was empty. The fence line was clear. The card reader housing reflected light from the floods and nothing else. The intercom hissed for another 10 seconds. Then it clicked off. The screen went dark. I sat in the chair and listened to the transformer hum. My hands were shaking again, so I shoved them in my pockets. The laminated card was still on the desk next to the clipboard. I didn't need to read it. I'd followed the rule. Hadn't answered. Hadn't touched the lock. The clock on the wall read 2:44. I stayed in the chair and watched the monitors. All 16 feeds cycled through their views. Fence line, gravel, switchyard, hallway. Everything clear. Everything normal. I didn't look at the window again. At 3:05 in the morning, the camera feeds fuzzed. It started on monitor 2, the east fence line view, where the image flickered and rolled like an old TV losing signal. Then monitor 1 went static, then 3. Within 5 seconds, all 4 screens showed nothing but gray-white noise and horizontal lines that scrolled upward in slow waves. I leaned forward in the chair. The SCADA screens above the monitors were still cycling normally, showing voltages and load levels that updated every few seconds. The feeds were live. The cameras were still getting power, but the monitors showed only static. Then they cleared. The image snapped back all at once. No gradual return. Just static 1 second and clean feeds the next. I scanned all 16 quadrants. Fence line clear. Gravel lot empty. Hallway showing the same cinder block and linoleum as before. Monitor 4, switchyard view, showed movement. A person walked between 2 breaker housings in the upper right quadrant. They wore dark coveralls and moved at a normal pace, hands at their sides, heading toward the center of the yard. No orange vest, no high-vis jacket, just coveralls and work boots. I grabbed the laminated card and found Rule 4. If any individual in the switchyard is not wearing an orange high-visibility vest, press Alarm 2 on the desk panel. Do not attempt to identify the individual, and do not look at the switchyard again until yard lights cycle off and on. My eyes went back to the monitor. The figure kept walking. Something about the build looked familiar. 5'10" maybe. Sturdy. The way the shoulders sat, the stride. I thought it might be Ricky. The figure stopped walking and turned to face the camera. It had my face. Not similar. Not close. Exact. Same gray-blue eyes, same squared jaw, same short brown hair, same split in the lower lip where I'd caught a pipe elbow on a job in Tacoma 4 years ago and needed 6 stitches. The figure stared directly into the camera. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stood there in the middle of the switchyard wearing my face and watching me through the monitor. I hit Alarm 2. My hand slammed the red button on the desk panel hard enough that pain shot through my palm. A single siren whooped outside. One short burst, sharp and loud, then silence. The figure on the monitor froze, completely still, arms at its sides, face locked on the camera. Then it started moving again, faster this time, not running, just walking with longer strides, closing the distance between the breaker housings and the control building. It didn't look down, didn't look away from the camera, just kept that same blank stare fixed straight ahead while its legs ate up the gravel. I watched it cross half the switch yard in the time it should have taken to move 10 feet. The yard lights were still on. Steady. Bright. According to Rule 4, I wasn't supposed to look at the switch yard again until they cycled off and on. But the lights weren't cycling, and the figure was getting closer. I could see more details now. The coveralls had a name patch over the left chest. Too far away to read, but the shape was there. The boots were steel-toe, scuffed brown leather. Work boots. The kind I wore. The face didn't change expression, didn't shift. Just my face staring back at me from the monitor. 20 feet from the building now and still moving. 15 feet. 10. The siren stayed silent. The transformer hum stayed steady. The SCADA screens kept cycling. The figure stopped just outside the camera's lower frame, close enough that I couldn't see its feet anymore. Just the torso and head. Just my face filling the quadrant, staring up at the lens. Then it turned toward the building and started moving faster. The yard lights started blinking. 3 times, then 3 more, then 3 again. I looked away from the monitor fast enough to feel it in my neck and turned toward the south wall. Same bulletin board, same fire extinguisher with the April tag, same faded safety notices I'd stared at an hour ago. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. My voice sounded thin in the control room. The transformer hum behind it wasn't steady anymore. It fluttered, dipped and rose and dipped again like something trying to hold on. 4, 5, 6. The yard lights kept blinking on the other side of the window. I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the bulletin board and counted. 7, 8, 9. Then I heard footsteps, wet footsteps. Not outside. Inside. They came from the direction of the bay door, slow and deliberate. Boot treads on linoleum with a sound like someone just walked through a puddle. I kept counting. 10, 11, 12. The footsteps stopped, close. Maybe 15 feet behind me and to the left, right where the hallway met the bay door area. 13, 14, 15. The handle turned, not all the way. Just a quarter rotation, testing the latch. I gripped my hands together in front of me and stared at the fire extinguisher. The inspection tag had a signature I couldn't read from here. April 9th, 2 months ago. 16, 17, 18. The handle turned again, slower this time. The bolt rattled in its housing, but held. I'd checked that door at 12:04. The latch was solid. I'd felt the wind slam against it hard enough to shake the frame. 19, 20, 21. The hum dropped lower, thinner, like it had at 2:15 when I'd stared at the floor and counted tiles. 22, 23. Something shifted on the other side of the door. Weight redistributing. I could feel it through the floor. A presence standing right there with its hand still on the handle. 24, 25, 26. My throat felt dry. I swallowed and kept going. 27, 28, 29. I wasn't going to make it to 60. That thought hit me hard and certain. Whatever was behind me wasn't going to wait. But I kept counting anyway. 30. The handle stopped moving. The wet footsteps didn't start again. Everything went quiet except for the uneven hum and my own breathing. I counted to 60. All of it. Out loud. When I turned around, the hallway was empty. The bay door was closed. The floor showed no wet prints. The monitors still showed all 16 feeds. Fence line, gravel, switchyard, hallway. I sat down hard in the chair and pulled out my phone. Still no signal, just the blank carrier space and the X. I picked up the landline and dialed Ricky's number. My hands shook enough that I had to redial twice. He answered on the fourth ring. His voice came out thick and groggy. "Yeah, it's Clyde, from the substation." A pause. Rustling sounds. Then Ricky's voice came back clearer. "What happened?" I hit alarm 2. Silence on the line. Then a breath. "You saw someone in the yard?" "Yeah, no vest. I hit the button like the card said." Okay, did the siren go?" "Once, just one whoop, then it stopped." More silence. I heard Ricky moving around, a door closing. His voice dropped lower. "Where are you right now?" "Home. Irrigan. I'm in my kitchen. Why?" I looked at the monitors. All clear, nothing moving. "Just checking." "Clyde, alarm 2 doesn't call the cops. You know that, right?" Ruby didn't say what it does. It locks the site down. Full lockdown. Changes the power routing through an old bypass configuration. Staff don't like using it because it puts load on equipment that's supposed to be retired. Makes everything unstable. I watched the SCADA screen cycle. Voltages look steady, load balanced. "It looks fine here." "Yeah, well, it doesn't always show right away." Ricky paused. "Listen, you still got that card?" I pulled it out of my pocket and set it on the desk. "Yeah." "Look at Rule 4 again, the part about Alarm 2. Look at the laminate." I picked up the card and tilted it under the desk lamp. The surface was cloudy and worn. I'd noticed that when Ruby first handed it to me. But now, looking closer, I saw the cloudiness wasn't even. It was smeared, deliberate. I held it up to the light and saw faint pen marks underneath the printed text. Older ink. Different handwriting. "There's something under it." "Flip it over." I turned the card. The back was blank except for more smeared laminate and faint impressions of text that had been covered over. "What am I looking for?" "Hold it at an angle. You'll see it." I tilted the card and caught the light different. The pen marks showed clearer. Not a lot. Just fragments. Confront the trespasser. Open bay door and verify identity. My stomach dropped. This used to tell guards to open the door. "Yeah." Ricky's voice was flat. Old version. Before they revised the protocol, someone laminated over it instead of printing new cards. Why? I don't know. Maybe they ran out. Maybe they figured it didn't matter as long as the right text showed on top. I set the card down and stared at it. The rules I'd been following all night. The ones that kept me inside. Away from the switch yard. Away from the intercom when it didn't say test. The old rules told guards to do the opposite. How many people followed the old version? Ricky didn't answer right away. "Ricky, I don't know. A few, maybe, before they figured out it was wrong." The bay door thumped. Once. Heavy enough to rattle the bolt. I stood up fast enough to knock the chair back. "Clyde?" "Something just hit the door. Don't open it." "I'm not." The hum stopped. Completely. All at once. The overhead fluorescence went dark. Emergency lights kicked on 2 seconds later, bathing the control room in dim red. "Clyde, talk to me." I didn't look up. Rule 5. If the hum stops, stay seated and don't look up. But I was already standing. I sat down fast and locked my eyes on the desk. The clipboard. The laminated card with its smeared surface and hidden text underneath. Hum stopped. Emergency lights are on. Don't look up. Don't look at the ceiling or the windows. Just wait. I waited. The red light made everything look wrong. The monitors still glowed, but the feeds were harder to see. I leaned forward and focused on monitor 4, switchyard view. The figure was still there, standing by the bypass cabinet now. Not the breaker housings. It had moved while the lights were cycling. It moved with certainty. Practiced. Like it knew exactly where to go. It reached up and pulled something off a hook mounted on the cabinet. An orange vest. High-vis reflective panels. It hung stiff in the figure's hands. The figure put it on, slowly, arms through the holes. Velcro straps fastened across the chest. Now it was wearing an orange vest. Ricky, it just put on a vest. What? The person in the yard. It grabbed an orange vest off the bypass cabinet and put it on. Ricky swore, quiet but sharp. It's adapting. What does that mean? It means it's learning the rules, figuring out what you'll respond to. The intercom crackled. The screen lit up. Green text, one word. Test. The intercom just came on. It says test. Don't answer it. The card says if it shows test, I can... Clyde, don't. I stared at the screen. The green text glowed steady. No flickering, no static. The voice that came through wasn't Ruby's this time. It was mine, my own voice. Same tone, same cadence. Clyde Cooper. This is Clyde Cooper at External Bypass. Need you to confirm load transfer from inside. Hit talk and give me a status check. I reached for the talk button. My hand stopped an inch away. Ricky's voice came through the phone. Clyde, do not touch that button. It sounds like me. I know, don't answer it. The intercom voice continued. Clyde, I'm stuck out here in the cold. Bypass is locked and I can't get back in without your confirmation. Just hit talk and tell me you read the SCADA screens as stable. That's all I need. I pulled my hand back. It knows my name. It knows the equipment. It's using what you know, what you'd say. Don't give it anything back. The intercom hissed. The green test text stayed on the screen. Clyde Cooper. Confirm status. I didn't touch the button. I sat there with my hands flat on the desk and watched the monitors. The figure in the orange vest stood by the bypass cabinet, facing the camera now. My face staring up at the lens. Then it reached for the cabinet panel. It's opening the bypass. What? The figure. It's opening the bypass cabinet. Don't let it touch the controls. If it trips the bypass from outside, the load'll shift wrong and you'll lose power completely. I looked at the desk. At the panel Ruby never mentioned, the one with the green button the fake voice told me to press earlier. There were other controls too, breakers, overrides, a red switch labeled manual bypass. How do I stop it? You trip the bypass first, from inside. It'll cut the yard lights and force the load back through primary routing. What happens to the figure? I don't know, but it won't have power to work with anymore. The figure on the monitor pulled the bypass panel open. Its hands moved over the controls, confident, like it had done this before. I stood and walked to the main panel by the door, the one I'd avoided all night. The red switch sat behind a clear plastic cover. I flipped the cover up. I'm at the panel. Throw the switch all the way down, don't stop halfway. I grabbed the switch and pulled. It was stiff, old. I had to use both hands. The building shuddered. A deep vibration that ran through the floor and up the walls. The yard lights went dark, all of them. The switchyard disappeared into blackness. Something hit the fence line, hard. Metal screamed and buckled. Then the screaming started. My voice. Exactly my voice. Coming from outside, from the direction of the bypass cabinet. It screamed and didn't stop for breath. Just one long, continuous sound that shouldn't have been possible from human lungs. I stood by the panel with my hand still on the switch and listened to myself scream. The hum came back, slow at first, then stronger, building until it reached the steady drone I'd heard all night. The screaming cut off. The emergency light stayed on, but the overhead fluorescence didn't come back. The monitors glowed in the red dimness, showing 16 feeds of darkness and fence line. Clyde. I walked back to the desk and picked up the phone. Yeah. You okay? Yeah. What happened? I tripped it. Something hit the fence. Then it stopped. Ricky let out a long breath. Stay inside. Don't go check the fence. Don't go outside for anything. Wait for the foreman at 6. I looked at the clock. 4:38. Okay. I mean it, Clyde. I'm not going anywhere. We stayed on the line for another minute without talking. Then Ricky said he'd wait up until I called back to say the foreman arrived. I hung up and sat at the desk. The monitors showed nothing moving. The SCADA screens kept cycling. Load balanced. Voltages steady. I didn't drink any more coffee. Ruby came back at 6:05 with 4 other people. I watched them on camera 3. 2 trucks. Ruby got out of the first one with a tall man in a hard hat and BPA jacket. 3 more people climbed out of the second truck wearing work gear and reflective vests. They stopped at the gate. Ruby swiped her card. The gate rolled open. Then they saw the fence. I couldn't see it from the control room monitors. The angle was wrong. But I watched them all turn and stare at something past the frame. The tall man walked toward it. Ruby followed. The other 3 stayed by the trucks. I stood and walked to the window, the narrow one facing the switchyard. The fence line was bowed outward. A section about 10 feet wide bulged away from the substation like something massive had thrown itself against it from the inside. The chain link was intact but warped. The posts leaned at angles. And in the gravel below the bypass cabinet, something dark and fused lay flat against the ground. An orange vest, burned into the rocks. The reflective panels were melted and the fabric was blackened, but the shape was clear. Ruby and the tall man stood looking at it. One of the workers from the second truck, a woman with her hair in a braid, walked over and crouched next to the vest without touching it. I stepped back from the window and returned to the desk. 5 minutes later, Ruby knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps. I unlocked it and let them in. Ruby looked tired. Same windbreaker. Same badge lanyard. She nodded at me once. You're Clyde Cooper? Yeah. I'm Ruby Park. We spoke yesterday. This is Jimmy Lee, site foreman. The tall man stepped forward. Weathered face. Hard hat under his arm. He shook my hand with a grip that felt automatic. You hit alarm 2 last night? Yes, sir. What time? 3:05. Jimmy pulled a clipboard from under his arm and made a note. What did you see? I glanced at Ruby. She nodded. Someone in the switchyard. No vest. I followed Rule 4. Did you see where they went? Bypass cabinet. They put on a vest that was hanging there. Jimmy looked at Ruby. She didn't react. Did they touch the equipment? They opened the panel. I tripped the bypass from inside before they could do anything. You tripped it manually? Yes, sir. Jimmy made another note. He looked at Ruby again. That matches the log. Load shifted at 03:17. Ruby turned to me. Did anything else happen? Intercom? Lights? I pulled the laminated card from my pocket and set it on the desk. Lights blinked 3 times at 12:07. I followed Rule 2. Intercom activated at 2:41, but the screen didn't say test, so I didn't answer. It activated again at 03:20-something with test showing, but I still didn't answer. Ruby picked up the card and looked at it. Her expression didn't change. Why didn't you answer when it showed test? Because I called my coworker, Ricky Banks, and he told me to check the laminate. There's an old version underneath. Different instructions. I showed her the angle, the pen marks, the fragments about confronting trespassers and opening the bay door. Ruby stared at the card for a long time. Then she handed it to Jimmy. He held it up to the overhead emergency lights and tilted it. His jaw tightened. This card's been retired for 2 years. I didn't know that, Ruby said quietly. I grabbed it from the active protocol binder. Someone put it back in rotation. Ruby didn't answer. She looked at me instead. You didn't open the bay door? No, ma'am. You didn't go outside? No, ma'am. You stayed at the desk and followed the current printed rules, not the ones underneath? Yes, ma'am. She nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked to the door. She opened it and gestured to someone outside. A man in a sheriff's uniform stepped in. Tall, clean-shaven, body cam on his chest. This is Deputy Francisco Stevenson. He's going to take a statement and document what we found outside. Francisco pulled a notepad from his belt and asked me to walk him through the night, start to finish. I told him about the white pickup at 1:03, the intercom at 2:41, the figure in the switch yard at 3:05, hitting alarm 2, the wet footsteps and the bay door handle turning, calling Ricky, finding the old text under the laminate, tripping the bypass. He wrote it all down without interrupting. When I finished, he asked if I'd gone outside at any point. I said no. He asked if I'd opened the bay door. I said no. He asked if I knew what hit the fence. I said I didn't. He closed the notepad and looked at Ruby. I'll file this as a trespassing attempt with property damage. The vest'll go to the lab, but I'm not optimistic. Looks like heat damage, not contact. Ruby thanked him. He left. Jimmy stepped forward and set a single sheet of paper on the desk. Internal incident report. Read it and sign at the bottom if it's accurate. I read it. The report listed the time I hit alarm 2, the manual bypass trip, and the fence damage. It noted no injuries and no entry to the control building. It didn't mention the figure's face or the intercom voice or the laminated card's hidden text. I signed it. Jimmy countersigned and filed it in his clipboard. Ruby reached into her jacket and pulled out an envelope. She set it on the desk next to the report. $300, cash, 10 hours at 30 per hour. I picked it up. The envelope was thick and unsealed. I didn't count it. Thank you. You did good work. Followed protocol. Didn't panic. I nodded. Ruby looked at Jimmy. He nodded and walked out with Francisco and the 3 workers I hadn't been introduced to. Ruby stayed. I'm driving you to a motel in Boardman. You're staying today and tonight on BPA. Tomorrow you can get your truck and go home. I can drive now. No. You've been up for 24 hours and you just worked a threat event. You're staying at the motel. I didn't argue. I was tired enough that standing felt difficult. Ruby walked me outside. The sun was up. The air was cold and clean. The fence was worse up close. The posts were bent, and the chain link bulged outward like something had pushed it from the inside with massive force. The orange vest was still there, fused flat. The gravel around it looked scorched. I got in Ruby's truck. She drove me west toward Boardman without talking. We pulled into a motel off the highway, single story, gravel lot. A sign that said Columbia Inn with half the letters burned out. Ruby walked me inside. A woman with auburn hair and glasses sat behind the front desk. Her name tag said Miranda Crawford. Morning, Ruby. Morning. Need a room for one night. BPA is covering it. Miranda pulled a key from the board behind her and slid a registration card across the counter. I filled it out. She handed me the key without asking questions. Room 12, end of the row. Checkout's at 11 tomorrow. Ruby walked me to the room and unlocked the door. The interior was clean. 2 beds, a bathroom, curtains pulled shut. Get some sleep. If anyone asks about last night, refer them to Jimmy Lee. Don't talk to anyone else. Am I coming back? Ruby looked at me for a long moment. No, the overnight position's been filled. I nodded. She left. I locked the door and sat on the bed. The envelope was still in my pocket. I pulled it out and counted it. $300. Exactly. I set it on the nightstand and lay back on the bed with my boots still on. I didn't return to the substation. The overnight job ended right there. The rules stayed laminated, smeared and cloudy with old text hidden underneath. I figured someone else would get handed that card eventually. Maybe they'd tilt it toward the light. Maybe they wouldn't. That wasn't my problem anymore.